In 1603, the English Queen, Queen Elizabeth I, was wary of the power and prestige of Irish harpers, and so she gave the famous command, "Let the harpers be hanged, and let their harps be burned." Irish creativity in the 17th and 18th century faced immense changes and steep challenges. And I think we can learn quite a lot from the way they navigated those changes and challenges and ultimately overcame them. And that's what we'll talk about today. Fáilte a chairde, welcome my friends. I'm so glad you're here. Thank you so much for coming to visit me. My name is Kate Chadbourne. I'm a singer, storyteller, and poet, and I'm also a professor of Irish language and folklore. And I'm really interested in the way those two things, creative practice and Irish folklore, especially Irish tradition, can weave together to help us live lives of creativity and ultimately joy. So let's talk just a little bit about the history of this time. The 17th and 18th centuries are a time of immense changes. The native system of patronage has left the island with what's known as the Flight of the Earls in the early part of the 17th century. At the same time, so basically the poets who had relied on those patrons who had been hired to praise them and to talk about them and to make poems about them have left. And so you have the crashing down of literally centuries of tradition around the bardic institutions, the bardic establishment, the way that poets and creators were trained and supported and woven into the very fabric of society. It just comes undone. Then you have on top of that actual colonization and oppression, no way around that. We have the penal laws a little bit later that actually prohibit Irish people from being educated. Amazing to say. They were not allowed to be educated, nor were they allowed to send their children abroad to be educated. They were not allowed to attend Catholic services. They were not allowed to speak Irish language. Of course they did, but in an official capacity, they weren't allowed to. And they were not supposed to indulge in Irish art, as in playing music and certainly gathering. So you can imagine this was a systematic extermination of Irish culture. And yes, it had profound implications and a profound effect on the way that Irish creativity was practiced. However, what moves me so much is the way it was never possible to completely stamp out that creativity. And I've been thinking, what is that creative spirit? And it is the creative spirit that says imagination and wit and beauty and innovation and the individual voice. All of that matters, and we're still going to have it. And so moving from the bardic establishment of the bardic training centers, we now have hedge schools. You know, the actual schools go underground more or less, and so people are meeting outside, as they are alluding to, like by the bushes or under a tree, to educate everyone. We have incredible scholars with classical learning, deep learning, are sitting outside teaching people. We also have, you know, as the practice of using Irish instruments is outlawed, you have music, singing of course can never be outlawed or can't be really caught, and you have people using mouth music, puirte béal or lilting, so that people can still dance. And those are just a couple examples of the way these things still flourish until the external circumstances make it possible to come back out into the open. It's about a couple of centuries, really, of terrible time. And yet we know, because we actually have a body of poetry and music from this time. And we actually know that the harpers continued to harp because we have actually a body of harping that was collected in the 18th century by Edward Bunting. We know that people continued. We know that people found music and the arts and creativity essential to life, and they continued. Until, again, things really got better into the end of the 18th century and the 19th century, and a lot of those prohibitions fall away. But I was thinking about this time and what it means for us today as individual creators. And three things I just want to highlight. One of them is the movement from institutional forms of creativity to individual. The locus of creativity moves from a corporate, from the bardic institution to the person. So now in the 17th and 18th century, we have what people now call the wandering minstrels or the traveling bards. We have people who take to the road and are still bringing creativity around. But it's a person, right? They're divorced from an institution. And I think that's important for us today because it seems to me, looking, that the institutions which once held up some of our shared creative life are changing a lot. The music industry, the publishing industry, even performing arts centers, there's changes. I'm not saying they're gone, and there hasn't been a systematic extermination of those things, but they are changing. And I think one of the lessons we can take from this time of Irish history is to remember that each of us is a locus of creativity. We carry that in ourselves. We do not have to wait for an institution of any kind to give us the formal go-ahead. Go ahead is what I say. This is yours. It belongs to you. It belongs to every single person. Is it lovely to have institutional support and some kind of pat on the head that says we appreciate you and value you and here's a check? Absolutely. Is it necessary? No, it's not. And that, I think, is how Irish creativity carried on, because individual people picked it up and said, I still have this. I still want to share this, and I'm going to. So that movement, I think, there's a lot of possibility and invitation there. So think about that. Then, of course, another lesson we can take is resilience and adaptation. Amazing, right? So as I mentioned, going from perhaps having access to instrumental music for dancing to going to mouth music to accomplish the same thing. Using what you have today, not sort of saying, oh, I used to have this, or once I could do this, I used to be able to dance however, or I used to be able to hit those high notes. People say that. I hear them say that. Let's not. Let's say, actually, I have so much to give still. Or, I don't have that instrument anymore, but I do have this. Or I'm not as excited about painting as I once was, but I'm really excited about pottery. Let that creativity, like a river, take its course. And let's be resilient. If we don't have access to something, let's do something else. Creators through time have always just made what they could with what they had to hand. And I'm inspired by that. I want us all, I've always said that my main value in creativity is keeping going. And that's also what I see here in the Irish example. Keeping going no matter what, finding a way. And finally, I just want to say, let's be very wary of our inner Queen Elizabeth the First, because we like Queen Elizabeth II. But Queen Elizabeth I, whatever her other virtues, she was not good to the Irish. And she was, that burning the harps and hanging the harpers. How have we internalized anything like that? That's a kind of colonization. Anything in us that says, no, You can't have that. You're not allowed. You don't have time. You're not worthy. You're not good enough. All of those things, those royal proclamations, which feel so true. They feel like they are coming from some sort of inner royalty that says, oh, no, no, no. I was just looking inside myself and I realized one of my royal proclamations, my Queen Elizabeth that speaks up, is work first and create later. I'm getting rid of that, my friends. I am getting rid of that. That is not a helpful proclamation to make. Of course, we need to get our work done, but I think we can always have work. Work will always expand, fill the space we give it, right? And we can, I think, in that, see creativity, our creative life, as something extra, as a little treat, a reward for good behavior. No, absolutely not. You know, yesterday I took the time to finish a song that I've been juggling for a couple of months. I started it in the beginning of June, and I had been working on it in dribs and drabs, little bits of time I gave it. And yesterday I woke up and I thought, give it the time, Kate. You don't have, why did I give it the dribs and drabs? Because of that idea. Like, oh, there's so much to do. You need to get that done. You need to be sure that you're doing all these things that will keep you afloat. And sure enough, yesterday, it took an hour or two to create this song that I'm thrilled with, that I love. And more than that, that I feel like it gave me something back and restored sovereignty to me. And that's what I want for all of us, a sense of sovereignty, a sense that our creativity is central, that it keeps us afloat, even as we keep afloat with the other things that we have to do. So I hope that's helpful, sort of taking that in, looking at that fantastic Irish example of creative flourishing, even in conditions that we would not call ideal. In fact, we would call them non-ideal. And yet, creativity is a powerful force and will not be put down, as we see. And maybe let's be careful of the inner Queen Elizabeth I in ourselves. So I wanted to ask you, what is your inner Queen Elizabeth I telling you? And how do you find a way to countermand that? How do you oppose that? Or are you not opposing it yet? Would you like to? Just what's your best way to live these lessons? So thank you as ever for being here. Please do comment. I love to hear from you. It's so much fun, the conversations we're having. Thank you so much for your likes. And please do subscribe to this channel. It's growing and we're together. And I love being with you here. So thank you, everyone. And I hope you have a creative and, yes, a sovereign week. Slán go fáil a chairde mo chroí. Goodbye for a little while, friends of my heart.